Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the massive, completely unmonitored spaces of our oceans to uncover a really staggering global mystery. You know, when you look at a digital map of the Earth, the ocean is mostly just this big, pixelated blue expanse. For a long time, we kind of just assumed there wasn't a whole lot going on out there. But as we're going to see, that is incredibly far from the truth.
So let's start with a provocative question. What actually happens out in the high seas when seemingly no one is looking? Because when you start digging into the source material, the ocean quickly transforms from this empty blue space into a massive crime scene, completely hidden in plain sight. It's an area so unbelievably vast and remote that it's inherently difficult to police. And that creates the absolute perfect environment for shadowy activity to happen right in the dead of night.
Okay, so by law, ships are supposed to use a system called AIS so we can see what's happening out there. Think of it like air traffic control, but for the entire ocean. It allows vessels to constantly share and broadcast their real-time GPS locations. So on a basic level, we actually have a pretty solid technological way of tracking the traffic moving across the globe.
But here is the loophole, and it's a big one. A ship's captain can simply turn this transponder off. Now, sometimes this is done totally legally to hide from real-world pirates, but very often it's done to perform unseen, quote-unquote, dark activity. And the crazy part is, it is literally as simple as pressing a button. They flip that switch, and the ship effectively vanishes from the map and from public view, letting them operate under total cover of darkness.
And we have clear historical records showing this isn't just a random glitch, it's a deliberate pattern. Vessels intentionally vanish right before entering highly protected, resource-rich waters. We're talking about a Spanish vessel vanishing off the coast of West Africa, an Australian ship going completely dark near a marine reserve, or a Panamanian vessel approaching Ecuador's highly protected Galapagos Islands, and then, boom, just disappearing. Their last known location essentially becomes our primary context clue.
Let's move into part 1, the world's biggest fleet and China's global reach.
The sheer scale of this is absolutely staggering. Since depleting its own coastal waters in the 1980s due to rapid industrialization, China has built a state-subsidized fleet of 57,000 industrial fishing vessels. 57,000! And they are capable of sailing indefinitely. The government subsidized this massive fleet to push deep into international waters. So this isn't just fishing. It is a massive, coordinated geopolitical effort to project power.
When you break down the global numbers, nearly half of all fishing on Earth is conducted by this single, massive fleet. From public records, you can track these gigantic clusters of ships essentially hugging the economic borders of other countries. Now, on paper, it looks legal because they are technically out in international waters, but they are hovering right on the very edge of highly protected areas.
And how do they do this for so long? They operate using these massive refrigerated motherships. The smaller boats do all the actual fishing, drop off their catch to the mothership, and get refueled and resupplied right there on the water. They're sometimes even escorted by state intelligence ships. It's an entire system designed so these fishermen can stay out at sea for years. They literally never have to go back to port.
Which brings us to part 2, the true cost. The human toll out at sea. Because behind all that abstract satellite data are real men trapped at sea. Based on the incredible on-the-ground reporting of journalist Ian Urbina from the Outlaw Ocean Project, we know these workers often have their passports taken, enduring absolutely brutal conditions, completely isolated from the rest of the world. They're frequently held against their will, trapped by debt, and unable to escape because, like we said, the ships simply never touch land.
Urbina notes that the threat isn't just the physical danger of, say, falling overboard. It's the extreme psychological toll of disease, violence, and despair in these dark zones. It is essentially a slow-motion threat to the human psyche. These workers are isolated, malnourished, and pushed to the point of absolute exhaustion. And all of this is happening way out on the high seas, thousands of miles from anyone who might be able to help.
Urbina gives this visceral description of the squid jiggers that just shatters any illusion you might have of a clean, distant fishing industry. When squid are caught, they panic and spray ink. And because they naturally use ammonia for buoyancy, the ships eventually become coated in ink, super slippery, vermin-infested, and just reeking of urine and ammonia. It is an absolutely brutal, miserable working environment.
So, part 3, lighting up the shadows, how new satellite tech is fighting back. With such horrific abuses happening in the dark, the big question is, how is open source intelligence finally catching them in the act?
Well, groups like Global Fishing Watch are combining a bunch of new technological streams to peer right through that manufactured darkness. They aren't relying on just one data stream anymore. They're using satellites to spot the incredibly bright lights of squid boats at night, bouncing radar off dense metal hulls, snapping high-res optical photos from orbit, and using machine learning to analyze it all in near real time.
So when you contrast the old way with the new way, it's a game changer. Turning off an AIS transponder no longer makes a ship invisible. AIS is really just a snapshot of compliance. It only shows what vessels want you to see. But radar and high-res cameras, those provide undeniable physical evidence of massive metal ships operating deep inside protected economic zones. It totally exposes the lie.
And when you cross-reference all this new data, you uncover a truth that is honestly staggering. Up to 76% of all global fishing activity is entirely untracked. Let that sink in. We're not talking about a problematic minority or a few bad apples here. Going dark is the global norm. 3/4 of all fishing sets the stage for total non-compliance, resource theft, and these horrific human rights abuses.
Now for part 4, from sea to your plate, connecting this to the global supply chain.
So how does this actually reach us? Through a brilliantly efficient seafood washing process that essentially launders the fish. The mothership acts like a giant mixing bowl at sea. Once untracked squid stolen from the Galapagos gets dumped in and blended with legally caught squid, it becomes physically impossible to separate them. The origin story of that tainted seafood is completely erased before it ever reaches the shore. And the source material impartially documents that the grim reality doesn't end at the shoreline. The human rights abuses continue on land, where this washed, mixed seafood enters processing plants that frequently utilize state-sponsored forced labor. This includes utilizing Uyghur Muslims from re-education camps, alongside North Korean laborers who are operating abroad to generate revenue for their state.
The reality we have to face is that this isn't some isolated underground black market, because 70% of this processed seafood is shipped out to the rest of the world. It ends up as sushi in Japan, canned risotto in Europe, and cheap calamari appetizers right here in the United States. It's the standard operating procedure for the high seas, and we are all unknowingly participating in it.
So I want to leave you with this final thought, directly connecting the darkest, most distant reaches of the ocean right to the food on your dinner table. The next time you order some cheap calamari, will you wonder what the true human and environmental cost of that dish actually was? Because hidden inside that product is environmental degradation, profound human suffering, and the massive theft of global resources. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions and keep looking into the dark.